Selamat sore teman-teman semua, selamat datang kembali ke Skill Tree, webinar untuk mengembangkan skill kamu di game development. Di webinar mingguan dari Asosiasi Game Indonesia ini, kita akan mencoba untuk membahas dan menggali topik-topik soal pengembangan game, baik dari segi teknis maupun non-teknis. Nah, perkenalkan dulu, nama gue Arya, Program Manager dari Asosiasi Game Indonesia, yang akan menjadi moderator pada sesi kali ini. Nah, susunan acara untuk Skill Tree kali ini adalah presentasi, pertama presentasi, yang akan dipaparkan oleh speaker kita, lalu dilanjutkan dengan sesi tanya-jawab. Dan nanti akan ada sedikit penutup dari supporter kita. Jadi buat teman-teman yang punya pertanyaan, langsung aja tulis di kolom komentar. Nah, sekarang kita menggunakan bahasa Inggris dulu ya, soalnya kita kedatangan seorang speaker internasional. Okay, today we're going to have a session in English because we have another support of SLAB. We are able to have this special guest. And at the end of today's Skill Tree, we will hand out a little survey to you all, a little questionnaire, and please take a moment to fill it out. We also have door prizes for some lucky winners. So to win those door prizes, just first fill out the questionnaires, and second, register yourself in the portal, and then book a discussion with Slab to have the free program, and then get your if you're lucky. And the winners will be announced on Slab's Discord channel. Okay, let me introduce you to our guest today. Our guest today is the president of Ascende Games, the executive director of Game Plan, a game designer and a producer too. Please welcome Mr. Arison Uchoa.
Hello,
Hello,
guys. Hello. So nice to
so
meet you.
glad
Nice
to
to
have you
meet you all.
here.
Thank you very much. It's great to have to be here. I don't know. I have. It's really interesting, and I must be honest. It's one of my first international presentations. I do a lot of speaks here in Brazil, but it's great to have an audience in Indonesia and have the opportunity to speak about game development, about game production, things that are my passion, and together with Slab, it's amazing. It's an amazing opportunity.
Okay, maybe could you tell us about yourself so we can know you better?
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Harrison Shoa. I'm head of studio here in Game Plan. We're a game tech, so we're a company that develops solutions for companies in of the game industry and outside game industry based on game technology. So one of our main objectives is to create creative solutions for companies and for other studios. We work with co-development. We do serious games. We do gamification projects, and we develop our own IPs. So right now we're working with PC and console projects. For example, working with Xbox, partnered with ID at Xbox. And also, I'm a game designer for about 10 years by now. My main projects are based into serious game development, but also creating impact projects, working for Brazilian government and to other big companies here in the country. Outside of that, I work with the Regional Association of Game Developers here in Ceará, which is the state in northeast Brazil. It's a Sandy Jogos, basically. We work to promote great corporate possibilities for companies here in Brazil. So we work with our national government, we work with other institutions to create great opportunities for companies and people who wants to start game development. So it's a really amazing work to give opportunity to developers in especially in a region that is not traditionally known for the game development opportunities. So when we think about Brazil, we think a lot about São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, which are regions that have lots of opportunities into the technology market. But when we talk about the other regions in Brazil, it's always okay. I don't know what is happening there, but we work to create these great opportunities for the companies and to show there are really great talents outside the core view people think about of the game market. So it's not only about the great centers of game development because we have great developers all over the world, and it's part of our mission. In fact, as a company, Gameplan helps the ecosystem a lot, and about the game association. Uh, it's basically the same way to go from the Indonesian Game Association, probably because it's such an important mission we have here to empower game developers.
Wow, interesting. We should exchange some stories sometime because
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, I think we have the same problems in Brazil and in Indonesia. So yeah, that would be interesting. And what will you present us today? In
Okay. Today I'm going to talk about mobile pipeline and Slab. So Slab is the sponsor of this talk, but it's really interesting because when we talked about the opportunities to present Slab for other developers, one of the main points we thought about is how to present it integrated into the game developers' necessities, because we obviously have lots of service providers into the gaming industry, which do lots of things. But most of the time, it's just okay. This is interesting. This is great. This is gonna increase your numbers, your retention, and things like that. But most of the time, it's not something really really feeling about the game developer. So we most of the time we don't feel we are represented by these service providers because we think okay they don't really know about our necessities most of the time. They have interesting products, but I don't know how I can integrate it into my development pipeline and things like that. So the objective of this talk is to discuss a little bit about these aspects, mainly to talk about game production. So it's a simplified version of I don't know a 4 to 8 hours workshop I usually do about game production, but focused on some pitfalls we want to avoid when game developing and when focusing on mobile development, especially in house lab can help us to overcome them.
okay, great. Those are interesting topics. So I think our audience cannot wait to see you present the topics. And so, without further ado, Harrison, the virtual stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Okay, let me. Yeah, perfect. So this is the presentation about integrating results into the prediction. Thank you very much for everyone who's watching me now. Let's start. So, as I mentioned, my name is Arsen Shoa. I'm the president of Ascenda Games, which is a regional association here in Brazil. I'm also the executive director of Game Plan, game designer and producer. As a game designer, as I mentioned, my focus is on impact games, but I also develop IPs and I also develop very diverse projects which explore the potentialities of game development. And let's start with a quick explanation, probably an explanation that most of you guys are already familiar with about the generic game development pipeline. So I'll discuss a little bit about each of these topics and things that we usually do in each of those moments. So first of all, about the game development pipeline, we have lots of different approaches to it. Some people use the pre-production, production, and post-production structure. Some of them use the concept phase before the pre-production and the prototyping phase before the pre-production also. So we have 3 steps game development pipelines, 4 steps, 5 steps, and to simplify it, I'm gonna do it with 3 steps and discuss a little bit about what we can do and what we can expect in each of those moments, generically, obviously, and then we are going to discuss a little bit about the specificities. So about the pre-production, what we normally expect from a game development. First of all, the project concept, the initial ideas. What are the main aspects of the game we discuss when we have that cool insight about a game we want to develop? So such an important moment because we have so many ideas going on. We have so many thoughts about how our game could be developed and how our game should be. And definitely it's one of the main moments of the game development itself. One of the most interesting too. I'm a little bit suspected to talk about it because I'm a game designer, but yeah, it's one of my favorite parts, definitely. And then we have the documentation. We start to structure our game idea after the initial brainstormings. We want to organize all the ideas, put together all the interesting information about the game, eliminate some things that doesn't make sense on the project, but mostly trying to create an interesting framework for the game development, for the game we want to develop. So the documentation, the game design document, the technical design document, the art bible, all these documents are doing at this step of the project or start to be done at this step of the project because we want to have a clear view about what our game will be, what are the interesting things we want to put into the final product. So it's where we start to think more about the product than a project, than an idea, than a cool concept. Um, Mostly the reason, together with the time frame, that we don't do documentations for game jams, for example. So in game jams, we try to develop a cool project, but not exactly a cool product. And it's an important difference to consider. Uh, at the pre-production, we also want to think about the market study, and it's something important because most developers don't do it, which is which is kind of one of our main challenges during the game development. Market studies, trend analysis, business intelligence, all these things are really important at this moment of production so you can understand if your project concept is aligned on what the market needs and what the market wants, what people want to play. Even if it's niched, it's no worries if your game is not targeted to a broad audience. It's not going to be a blockbuster. I always talk about that a game doesn't need to be a blockbuster to be developed and to be created as a product. You just need to create something that will pay itself and that will maintain your study, creating your studio, creating the more products over time. So a success today in game industry is more like having a sustainable business model than having a blockbuster. It's easier for you to create a sustainable business model and a sustainable pipeline than creating a blockbuster. Uh, I can I don't know. I guess I can answer the questions during the presentations. No worry at all. So I will read the questions I'm seeing here. And yeah, let's do it. So does the pipeline follow an iterative model? Can we apply other models from? Yep, definitely, definitely. So when we think about a game development pipeline, most of these steps can be done using different development models. So we can apply Scrum, we can apply RUP, we can apply a cascade model, we can apply a road mapping structure. No worry at all. The only thing you have to pay attention is the size and the scope and the characteristics of your product. So, for example, it's not a big deal if you want to use Cascade and create a product development that is sequential. But at the same time, if you try to do it for a bigger project, you will probably have to worry about reworking most of the things because the game development process is mostly iterative. So it's easier for us to apply Scrum from the start, for example, because it's a cyclic model. We go on and go back most of the times to correct our development course. But you can apply any model you prefer. The generic game development structure pipeline is just a guide to think about which things must be done in each step. But for example, you definitely can do a brainstorm and then start a documentation and do a marketing study and see that the game project doesn't make sense, considering the market, for example. And then you go back to the project concept and start to do it all over again. Here in Game Plan, for example, we do kind of this thing. We do a project concept together with a simple documentation, a game concept documentation. And then we go to a market study with our business intelligence team. They validate if the projects are interesting or not for the marketing perspective, considering the niches, considering the hidden opportunities we can use. But if the game doesn't make any sense in any way, we go back to the project concept all over again, and then start to develop the project all over. It's kind of something that will take a lot of time, definitely. But at the same time, it's easier to correct text and to correct an idea than to correct code, art, and other more definitive structures. So we always try to iterate it as soon as possible, especially considering the marketing study during the pre-production specifically. So it's something that we need to worry about very soon. I hope it's answered the question. um, so the marketing study is such an important phase of the game development, and we most of the time we don't pay that much attention to it, but it's important to do it into the pre-production. At least know something about the opportunities of your game, see the trendings, see how they're going in Google Play, in App Store, see how they are going into Steam, see how they are going into the market in general. And then once you have it validated, once you have it guaranteed that it's interesting. So do you have any alternative in the custom game development pipeline? Yep, in fact I do. It's not that easy to explain, but in 2017, I guess, I participated into the Core Labs Game Accelerator. So I had a few mentorings with other experienced game producers and experienced game designers. One of them was an executive producer from EA, and he used five steps game development pipeline, divided into concept, into prototyping, pre-production, production, and post-production. And I used it since then. I think it's amazing. It's an amazing structure to be based on. And it really helps to understand better the game development process into these, especially the early stages when your project is more abstract. But for explanation purposes, the three steps production, so pre-production, production, and post-production, it's easier to explain and to pass the content to you guys. But definitely, and we have a lot of different models to apply. So there are a lot of books that use 4 steps, other structures for 5 steps. It's a really diverse topic. But most of all, when we think about these development pipeline, we can think about the same activities just distributed into a different context. So for example, into the 5 steps game development pipeline, the project concept is put into the concept phase, obviously, and the prototyping part is put into the prototyping phase. And the pre-production is oriented to if the product can be executed, technically speaking. So the prototype, they have a different function, but it's a little bit complicated, and it takes some practice to do it. But basically, it's a game development structure that focus on game experience proposition. So you have a concept to and this concept is what your game is gonna provide to the players regarding an experience proposition, and your prototype is focused on evaluate if this proposition is interesting, and then the pre-production is to evaluate if the product can be executed into the time frame and with the resources you have. So it's a optimization phase, basically. So let's continue. So the prototyping phase under pre-production is focused on, yeah, prototype basically. So you create the product, you develop MVP, a minimum viable product structure, or a proof of concept, or a vertical slice, something that will provide you with information about how the game can go on, technically speaking. So how the coding can go on, how the art development can go on, how the game design will work, and all those things are important to understand how your game will be built effectively. And then we reach the production phase. The production phase is obviously the longer, so have the same number of activities here, but definitely not the same number of time allocated to it. We have effectively the product creation, so it will include basically everything from coding to art creation to game development, so to game design creation to Q&A process, everything from the game development as we understand game development is put into the game production basically. And it's a really highly iterative part of the project, because you're gonna do, if you apply Scrum, for example, your sprints will be daily or weekly, and you start to cycle the project a lot, and you start to correct lots of problems during the game development cycle. But also, it's an important phase to do a couple of things. It's an important phase to do the test cycles, not only the internal test cycles, but also the external test cycles. So a couple of games are launched during the production. So early access products, or products that you can do a soft launch or closed beta, closed alpha, and things like that. The test cycles are so important to understand what your audience want about your game, and what are their feedbacks, and if they can catch, and obviously they will do it, if they can catch bugs and other problems on your development. So it's really important to do it. And localization. The localization is an interesting topic, because most of the times we don't consider it, or we take it for granted, which is a little bit of a mistake. The localization is different from the translation, basically, but their function is to make the game more comprehensible and understandable to different audiences. We mainly think, when we think about localization, to put the game in English. So it's the global language for game developers. It's the global language for the gaming market. Let's put the game in English, and that's it. But first of all, we have more options about localization, and put the game into other languages to be more accessible to other people. We use an acronym. It's called effigs, to basically define which are the main languages we want to explore. And effigs goes for English, French, Italian, German, and Spanish, which are the main language. um yeah, like the age changing is something that we do with localization when we think about adapting the game product itself to different markets to reach certain thresholds and legislation and things like that. So for example, we can't use certain symbols in Germany because it will be considered a reference to things that are not legal there. We must change specifically characters. We must change specifically some even some colors sometimes, or the fact, for example, that it's clearly difficult to present the game with undead characters in China, for example. So the Chinese culture have such a reverence about dead. It's something sacred, and it's something that they don't allow to be used vaguely in a game. So you have to change the aesthetic of the characters. We've seen it a lot in League of Legends, for example, or other games. And it's a little bit different than censorship because sometimes, obviously, sometimes it's about legislation uh, aspects for of the market, but other times the localization is done to people better comprehend your game there. So it doesn't have only to deal with these change of imagery and other things, but also the change of text, the adaptation of the speech pattern of a character, and things like that to be better understood. Here in Brazil, we kind of have a joke about it because, for example, when we take a character from Texas in United States, we have a specific regional speech pattern here in Brazil that we kind of match one to another. They don't have anything to in common with each other, but we do it kind of okay. This is a speech pattern of someone who is far away from civilization and all into farms and things like that. It's easier for us to understand. It's easier for the general public to understand. It doesn't have anything to do in this case specifically with censorship, for example. So the localization is it's really important. But when we think about game development, we mostly think about the localization just in English or just in feeds, for example. But most of the time, it's interesting to have a product localized in the broader way possible. So if you have lots of markets to target, you have a great opportunity to create more empathy for your game developers, basically. So your localization, if you have an Indonesian localization, for example, for a game, it will be better for people in Indonesia to better understand the product on the go. It will be easier for the broad audience. If we have Portuguese Brazilian game localized, for example, it will be easier for Brazilian people to understand this game. So the localization is such an important deal during the production, during the development production, and through post production. Um, yeah, exactly. Today, German have this more contextual thing, but it's something that affected a lot of the German market into the 90s, for example, the 80s and the 90s, with a couple of classic games, in fact. So Doom had this problem, Wolfenstein had this problem. Right now, we have a couple of other countries that do these kind of things to other aspects of the product. So yeah, so the post production is a part of the game when you think about the publication, discoverability, market, and business result. Publication is literally the process to make your game available to other people. Which sounds simple, but it's not that simple, in fact, because we have so much variables, so much things to think about that is harder to do it into a effective way as a game developer, specifically if you do not have the experience to do all this process, all this pipeline. Discoverability is the other thing we don't think that much when we develop in the project. So it's okay. I published my game. It's available for other people, but how they will discover it, how they will find my game, uh, like marketing, but a little bit different. Because discoverability and marketing are two aspects of the same going in the same direction. So discoverability and marketing all go into the direction of make your game accessible to people and make them interested in your product and make them play, make them download, buy your game, etc. But discoverability specifically how your game will be found by other people, and it's really a challenge. We're going to talk it a little bit later. While the marketing is the whole strategy behind your product and how it will be known by other people, how they will be communicated to other people. There are lots of different strategies to do it. We'll discuss a little bit of them in a minute. And the business results, which are the most important thing into a sustainable pipeline, because you want your business result to be good enough so you'll be able to restart all the process into the pre-production of another product. So you want to make your company sustainable, which obviously is the expectations of every professional game developer. But okay, at the same time, we have the game dev's generic pipeline. We have the risks of the of game dev pipeline. So things that we want to pay attention during these phases of the game development. So considering the pre-production, one of our main worries are about the scope creep. So we think a game which is much bigger and it's completely integrated with all the other points, but we create a game that is so much bigger than we can develop and that we can really create something. Um, it's really integrated with the overestimation of resources. It's not that uncommon that game developers will think about, okay, I will take 4 months with 3 people to develop this game, when in fact you needed, I don't know, a year and a half and 12 people to develop the game. And it's really, really common to see these things happening because people tend to overestimate their capabilities, tend to overestimate the capabilities of the team, because they tend to be so euphoric, so energized at the start of the process. Then they think, okay, I'll work, I don't know, 80 hours in a day. I will work in each and every moment of my life, and then I can finish the product. But it's not safe and it's not healthy for you or for your team. So you have to think about it when you start to create a game scope. So what are your resources? What are you capable of effectively? Even people sane and healthy during the process, please. It's a really important thing. And the lack of marketing vision, obviously. So what I talked about before, people tend to do not have a clear marketing view, a clear marketing vision about their product. So which audience they will hit, the main traits and the selling points of your project, how it will all work for a game, considering the store perspective, considering the consumer perspective. During the production during the production phase, we have obviously the project management. It's really easy in comparison to start a game. It's hard to finish a game. So all game developers, me included, we all have lots of unfinished projects because project management is really hard. If we're not doing it professionally, or if we're trying to do a secondary project, if we're trying to do something that is not into our daily routine, the project management is something really, really hard because you have to balance the motivational aspects. you have to balance the interest of the team, you have to balance your resources and all the other things. So the project management is one of the great risks, one of the great pitfalls of the project production. We also have the product evaluation, basically the results of the game tests and the testing feedbacks. It's something that we tend to ignore until later into the development. So it's easier for us to develop our game and test it internally and have the results done internally. And we think, okay, the game is great. The game is great. It's perfect. Let's launch it. And then we launch the game, and people look at it and find lots of bugs that we never thought it would exist. So it's something that really important, because we tend to simplify our product evaluations. We tend to follow into predetermined scripts that will not find all the bugs and all the problems possible. And other people, our players, will find these problems, and it's such an important thing to have them evaluated early into the game process. And we also have the market-oriented conclusion of the game, the market-oriented result of the game. So the game is finished because we ended our resources, we ended our time, but at the same time, it's not market ready. So it's something that during the production you have to take really care of, because you have to pay attention about the state of your game for the launch. And during the post-production, you have the bureaucracy, the dev cycle of the algorithms, and the lack of resources. Let me explain a little bit about each of them. The bureaucracy is because each and every platform will have tons of bureaucracy to have your game there. So some platforms are easier, some platforms are harder. If you try to publish your game, for example, for Google Play, it will be easier to do than doing for App Store. But you have other possibilities too. The same thing goes if you're trying to go on PC, for example. Then Steam is much more bureaucratic than itch.io or GameJolt, for example. So you have to pay attention, because sometimes you will not match the correct compliances. You will forget some documents. You'll forget to pay something, and it can be a headache. It can be a messy and chaotic headache during your post production if you're not considering it. And we have the dev cycle of the algorithms, which is an important, really important part of this presentation. Because when you launch a game, if you're doing it into a commercially viable platform, so for PC, for example, Steam or Epic, but for mobile, Google Play, App Store, and other stores, all these stores have a dev cycle of algorithms. So when your game is launched, you have a time frame that your game can prove itself. So you have, for example, 48 hours until your game starts to be dumped into the second page and the third page and fourth page of that store and of their categories, for example. So you have a puzzle platformer. It starts first page of those two genres, but it starts to go second page and then third page over the time. And it's something that can yeah, make your game completely unviable if you miss the timing of this cycle, because your game needs to have as much attention as possible early into the development, early into the launch. But also it can be reverted during the time. So we have a couple of strategies. It's called ASO, which is an acronym for App Store Optimization. And these strategies are the way you try to circle this dev cycle of the algorithms, because they will always try to make your game invisible for other players in comparison to more profitable games. And if your game is not there, it's not that profitable, and starts to be less and less profitable. So as a game designer, it's a positive feedback loop. So the input, the output will go into the input again and starts to make things more and more accelerated until your game completely disappear in the stores. But it's something that we can overcome with good strategies and good tools. That's why I'm talking about Slab right now, in fact. And the lack of resources, obviously. So we always tend to reach the post production without money to do anything. Mostly a marketing strategy, for example. So obviously we can overcome the debt cycle of the algorithms with lots and lots of money injected into an aggressive marketing strategy. We can put a lot of money to user acquisition, for example, but it's something that it's really costly. It's something that will really give you a headache if you don't have the you know how to use the marketing and the campaign tools you have in your hands. So if you don't know how to use Google Ads, for example, or other tools, it will be something to one more thing to worry about. And the last thing you want to have into your post production is things to worry about. Um, so most of the risks encountered in game development, when we talk about these risks, most of them are not things game developers learn to deal with. So it's really, really important to have support doing this. And when it comes to mobile game development, the process is even more complex, which is why we are here, in fact, because this is what happened when we think about the mobile game development. We have the indie developer focus from the initial idea to the launch of the game on mobile stores, for example. And then we have all the other steps that needs to be considered when you think about publishing your game successfully into the mobile store. So you consume lots of your budget because the post production and the processing of publishing your game is really, really costly in comparison to the other steps. You need to implement time consuming app store optimization or an expensive user acquisition strategies. We can do it in many, many ways, in fact, but most of them are really costly. So, for example, we have the possibility to, okay, we don't go with a burst marketing strategy. We want to create a community. I have a great example here in Brazil. It's from a company called Road Snail. They have a game called Relic Hunters. Their first version of Relic Hunters was from 2016. And since 2016, they are creating a game community for the sequel. So they are going to launch a version of the game into Netflix, I guess, next month. And they will also launch the game into Steam and consoles, and it will be a multi-platforming game. It's really, really successful considering their marketing strategy, but it was all based into a community building strategy during 7 years, 6 years. So it's a lot of time, and most of the developers don't have this time frame to expand into the game. So it's one strategy to go, not exactly the best strategy to everyone, and something to be really, really considered carefully. That's why we have App Store optimization, for example, and that's why we have the possibility to do marketing burst strategies, but they are really costly. Um, and you have to do all the process in a manual and iterative process in an iterative way. So you have to do it all by yourself and customize it to each market because each market will have its own way to approach. Brazilian market is different from the Canadian market. It's different from the American market. It's different from Indonesian market. It's different from European market, and so it goes. So these are all things we have to take care. We need to really take care of these things personally most of the times. And the vast majority of the time, a mobile game is going to have trouble paying for itself with its revenue, especially if you don't take care of your post production. So the truth And the sad truth, in fact, is that most of the time games will not make money. It will not make enough money to pay themselves. So you have to use the less money possible to create the best strategy possible. You have to be smart if you don't want to expend all your money into marketing strategies, trying to make your game appear for your audience. But at the same time, you have to have the resources to create a great game. So we separated three aspects of the game development and of the game publishing itself. They are important, and that I talked about early into this presentation, which are availability, discoverability, and localization. For availability, it's really interesting. And now, yeah, we're starting to talk about Slab right now, but we were talking about in all the presentation, in fact. When we talk about availability, it's how your game will be available for the broader audience as possible. And when we think about the mobile development, we mostly think about Apple Store and Google Play, but we have so much more opportunities and so much more storefronts to upload our games and to have an interesting market for it. So, for example, we have the Huawei App Gallery, we have the Samsung Galaxy Store, we have the Amazon App Store, and then you think about, okay, I don't know how to reach those stores. It's really complicated for me. Yeah, but at the same time, Slab is a platform that can help you with, because they have all the opportunities to, first of all, make you see that these stores exist. When you log in this lab, when you register in this lab, and going to add your and going to add your game into the platform, you have the opportunity to, okay, add your game is already on Google Play and Apple Store, but you have the visibility of all those other stores that you can also add to have your game in there. And most of them are, in fact, easier than Google Play and Apple Store to publish your game. So, for example, Amazon App Store is a free store for you to update your game. You can upload your game freely on Amazon App Store. It will be available in various Amazon Fire dispositives. So you have the Fire Stick, you have all the other dispositives Amazon uses, all the other devices Amazon uses into your Android, into your iOS too. So it's an amazing store, for example, and you have the visibility and you can manage it through this lab platform. Slab also about game development and design advices. Slab had a lot of insights into the platform. It will give you cool information about the game market and the game opportunities for your product, and considering the market perspective. But it's basically a platform that will ease your work when thinking about the game publishing and the game marketing results. So it's directed to the market perspective, to the market standpoint. But as I mentioned before during the talk about the pre-production phase, these market insights are so much important that it can be and need to be integrated into your game project. So it's not about game development, but at the same time, you can use lots of the information you gather there to your game development. And you can tweak your game design and you can adjust a few things on your game to have better results. So when we think about the availability of a platform, we have all these opportunities, and you think about, okay, Google Play and App Store are the biggest ones, so why do I even care about the others? Because first of all, there are some countries that doesn't use that much Google Play or App Store. When we think about the Middle Eastern, for example, they have a store called Cafe Bazaar, which is much more popular than App Store or Google Play. When we think about Korea, they have their own super apps. When we think about China, they have their own super apps. So all these stores are available for you to use but it's something that you need to discover and something that you need to manage, and you have to have a platform, you have to have a dashboard to center all this management, or you're gonna go crazy, basically. But it's worth it. It's worth it. It's really worth it because you extract the best opportunities in each region, especially if your game is not all directed to, for example, European or American audience. You can have stronger audiences into secondary markets, which are not secondary, in fact. So Brazil, Indonesia, Philippines, Korean market. Well, yeah, Korean is one of the one of the majors, but other markets that are not America and Europe. And it's really interesting to have results integrated into these stores because they have a closer approach to these markets. They have lots of opportunities to go, and it's definitely a revenue not that many developers are touching right now. So when we think about the ASO, which is the App Store optimization we've talked about before. The ASO is basically a strategy to use the algorithms against the algorithms. When I mentioned about how they would dump you into the void, basically on the stores, they do it. They do it because of a reason. They will try to dump you based on your tags. They will try to dump you based on if your app is updated or not, if you're updating your titles, if you're updating your images and everything like that. So one of the most interesting aspects of this lab is that they will update it for you. So you can have a platform that can help you doing. I'll go to this slide. It's better to explain, in fact. So you have on platforms that will help you, for example, to update your keywords. So let's say, for example, that your game is a puzzle platform with medieval theme. Uh, Puzzle and platforming are really competitive games, are really competitive genres, and your game have it as their main tags. So their primary tags of your game are puzzle and platform. But for some reason, medieval tag is going up highly. So you have two possibilities. One, you will take care of it yourself. You have to pay attention on the marketing trend and adjust it manually. Or two, you can use Slab, and then Slab will will do these testing of keywords and update your main keywords to match the descriptions that will better fit into the algorithm. This is basically the ASO main strategy. So we on Game Plan, for example, we for a long time we used manual ASO management. We have a specific professional to do all the ASO of our apps and our clients. But it's a really, really interesting tool to have when you can just create these possibilities, create these branches for an ABC testing, for example, and let the tool work for you. Let the tool optimize it for you in a repeated cycle. And Slab allows it. So the free plan of Slab, for example, and yeah, it's something that I still didn't talk about the plans, for example. But the free plans of Slab that you guys can go now on the site, register yourselves and put your games into there. The free plans of Slab allow you to do the cycles each once every 2 weeks, for example. And then you can have the opportunity to go on the paid model and do it in a custom time frame, so you can always update your game, which is something amazing, considering the ASO, considering the App Store optimization. It's something really, really amazing because we have such an opportunity to don't worry about following the trends all the time and letting the tool work it for you based on your own inputs. So you set the variables, and then the tool work the best with what you got, with what you give to them. And obviously, they will help you to launch into all these marketing opportunities I've mentioned about. Um, and all these market storefronts I've mentioned about. And other thing, oh, sorry, okay. Another thing which is really important is about the localization. So as I mentioned, it's discoverability, it's the availability and the localization. When I mentioned about localization, Slab also do it. So it's really interesting because you can have your storefront text uploaded into Slab, and they will localize it to each and every platform you basically want. So if you have an Indonesia and you want a game to reach Indonesia, we can upload your storefront text, and Slab will localize these texts to Indonesian. The same goes for Brazilian Portuguese. The same goes for all the FX, which are basically the main languages, but also to other languages that are missed during our efforts to publish our games. So most of the times we think about FX, for example, because they are the main games. But let's be honest, if you publish a game here in Brazil, which is not in Portuguese, it starts to be kind of messy for the audience, and we have a broad audience for game developers. We have two 100 million people here in Brazil. Most of them are gamers. In fact, 73% of the population consider themselves gamers. So we have a broad, really, really big audience. And if you publish your game here in English with the English storefront, you're gonna get dumped. If you do it into Spanish, you're definitely gonna get dumped because Brazilian people, especially, doesn't want to read Spanish because we don't talk Spanish. Most of people think we do, but we don't. So it's such an interesting thing to have a localization to have your storefront adapted to each audience, because you can have lots of markets that are untouched by most developers that are really interesting to reach out, and you will not have time to do it manually. You don't have time, for example, to translate your game to the Indian market most of the times. It's not even in a fix, but it has more than 1 billion people. So it's an interesting market to go, and it's an interesting strategy to use a tool that can optimize and localize your text. And obviously, it will adapt your text over time. So if you want your game to stay relevant into the stores, you have your text, you have your images. Let's go back here. You have your text, you have your images changed over time, because the app stores will really like it. The algorithm will really like it. So they will count positive points for your application if you have constant updates, and these kinds of things count as updates. So changing images, changing the description text, updating your game, all those things count as important updates that will make your app more relevant, considering the App Store optimization aspect. So with all of this, all that work we talked about, all that work we've mentioned about the game development and all the things that need to be done after the game development, Slab can concentrate it. You can center all your efforts when you think about mobile game development into the Slab platform to have your desired results. And you mostly have to work in your game, in your main worries about as a game developer, and then you can use a platform to center all the other efforts and to help you understand how to take take the best results from your game. Which as a game developer, I must say it's really amazing. It's really interesting. And I have one comment I've done when I made this presentation here in Brazil. I really wish something like Slab for PC, because we have so much trouble publishing games on Steam. That's the truth. But Slab is amazing for mobile, and please, R&D from Slab, go on and develop more solutions like that. And that's it. Thank you very much, everyone. Get in touch with Slab. This is the main. This is the site from Slab, www.slab.rocks. Go on, register. It's free. You can accompany all the information. You can check it out for yourselves. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much, Arison, for your presentation. As the Q&A session was integrated with the presentation, so we will move straight to the closing session by Mbak Nita. So, halo Mbak Nita.
Halo Mas.
Halo. Mbak Nita ini adalah sesuai yang ada di sana ya, Head of Marketing dari
Ya,
Lab di Indonesia ya.
ya.
Jadi Mbak Nita ada yang ingin disampaikan nggak nih?
Ada. Mungkin sedikit ya Mas ya.
Ya.
Ya, oke teman-teman, terima kasih sudah join. Mungkin aku di sini pakai bahasa buat lebih nyaman teman-teman untuk dapatkan informasi. Di sini saya sebagai Head of Marketing untuk Indonesia. Jadi Stripe itu adalah perusahaan yang memberikan solusi pada para game developer yang fokus pada mobile apps yang membantu teman-teman untuk mendistribusikan, memasarkan aplikasi game teman-teman sesuai dengan target dan market baik itu lokal maupun global, dan itu secara gratis. Jadi ini kesempatan bagi teman-teman untuk ikut di free programnya Slab. Jadi tadi seperti yang disampaikan sama Mas Arya juga, teman-teman di sini boleh untuk mengisi kuesioner yang di dalamnya terdapat link untuk booking tanggalnya buat diskusi, dan nanti akan dibantu langsung sama tim engineer kita untuk membantu game aplikasi kalian sampai terpublish. Gitu. Jadi nanti dari teman-teman bisa ngisi kuesionernya, kemudian registrasi di portalnya, kemudian booking untuk diskusinya untuk mendapatkan program free, kemudian nanti akan dapatkan door prize gitu. Dan untuk nantinya mungkin dari teman-teman yang nanti untuk sesi tanya jawab, mungkin nanti ada pertanyaan yang mungkin lebih lanjutnya, teman-teman bisa diskusi lebih lanjut biar dibantu sama teman-teman, atau misalnya teman-teman bisa langsung email ke saya langsung ke nita@slab.rocks. Jadi mungkin nanti kalau untuk bookingnya bisa langsung ke link yang di-share sama Mas Arya. Jadi untuk sementara dari saya itu dulu sih Mas. Gitu. Thank you.
Oke, terima kasih Mbak Nita. So,
Yeah.
Harrison, actually we have two more questions here. Do you have time? Maybe
Yeah,
5
sure.
minutes?
Sure.
Okay, great.
I can see here the how do we decide when to close the door, open beta test when testing our game to users. It's basically it's based on the development moment of your project. So you do let's divide it. You do a closed test, not exactly a beta, but you do a closed test, a beta or an alpha. If you know your game have lots of problems to be fixed with, but you still need to test some core features. So if you want, for example, to test the core game loop of your game, but at the same time, you know the graphics are not that polished, you have lots of bugs, you have problems with connectivity and things like that, you go closed. So you want to have control over your audience. You want to have control over the quantity of people testing your game and things like that. And you go open when you have a possibility to do it with a more refined product, and when you want to do a stress test. So for example, open betas are really common when you want to test if your networking part of your game is working well. So you want to have a stress test. You want to have the biggest quantity of people testing your game at the same time, and let them crash your game. So this is basically your objective. But the main difference is this: you go closed when your focus is to test specifically functions, and you know your game is broken, and you know and you want to people to know that your game is broken. So they will not judge your game based on the appearance, and they will not judge your game based on the problems they found. So they are not expecting the game to be perfect, and it's okay. So it will not make you have a public backlash or something like that. And you go open when you want to stress the game and want to guarantee the quality of some more refined aspects. So you want to have a broader audience testing your game, and evaluating it by the qualities closer to the final product. And the beta version is basically closer to the final version of the game, but with some minor tweaks and adjustments that need to be done for the gold version of the game. And the alpha is the version where you have the functionalities, but not exactly the polishing and refinement you want for the final game. In the game development cycle, cycle development and conception at the same time. You can, in a broader sense, I mean, you can always think about your game while you're developing, but it's like trying to build your car while you're trying to drive it. Basically, because it's interesting for a product to have a clear concept about what you want to reach. So you want to know where to start and what you will do to end your game. And for this, you have to have you need to have a clear concept and defined scope of product. So it's risky to do development conception at the same time for longer projects. So when you're doing, for example, a game jam, you obviously gonna do development and conception at the same time. It's something that someone in the team will raise its hand and say, okay, let's do a platformer, and everyone starts to program a platformer, and then you start to, okay, but let's do it. I don't know, let's put a match tree on it. Okay, they start to program a match tree, and the artist starts to create match tree assets, for example, and it's so it goes. But it's a game jam. It's an 24 hours effort, a 48 hours effort, something really, really tight. When you go to a development cycle of 3 months, 6 months, and a year, it's really, really risky to do it. So the best way to go is have your concept well developed, have your documentation clear, and then start to develop your game.
Okay, great. So I think that's it for the Q&A session. And thank you, Harrison, for the presentation, for all the answers. I hope that this will have many benefits for our developers in Indonesia. So yeah, because the time is up. So guys, teman-teman semua, boleh langsung diisi link-linknya tadi ya, seperti formnya tadi, surveinya, sama ada link tree tadi untuk yang ingin tahu lebih lanjut tentang Slab. Dan ya, itu aja. Jadi nanti kalau ada pertanyaan lebih lanjut, bisa langsung aja lewat link tree nanti, bisa masuk ke Discord-nya Slab dan lain sebagainya. Dan jangan lupa juga isi form survei, questionnaire, untuk bisa mendapatkan hadiah yang menarik dari Slab. So, that's all for today. Thank you, Harrison.
Thank you
We
very
hope
much.
to see you again.
Me too. Let's trade some info about these game association business. It's really cool.
Great then. Okay then. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.